Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, you are in for a real treat. We have the Jessica Lackey from jessicalackey.com right here, right now. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Excited to be here.
So we're going to talk about scaling and systems and all kinds of good stuff. But I'm curious, just to get us rolling, give us the Jessica Lackey story. What were some of the adventures along the way that brought you to the work that you're doing today?
Yeah. So I built my career in what I call the gilded corporate path, McKinsey and Company consulting, engineering background, Harvard Business School, 7 years at Nike, until I realized that I couldn't be on the corporate path anymore. My body started to let me know that that wasn't the path for me. Had some, mental, physical health challenges and decided that I wanted to go on a different path. So moved to Charlotte, North Carolina 5 years ago. 3 years ago, quit my job to leap out in the middle of the pandemic to consulting. And here we are today.
So you had done, obviously, with McKinsey, that is like big time corporate consulting. What made you crazy enough? What made you wacky enough to start working with small and solo business owners at these various stages of growth that we're going to talk about?
I think the thing that made it wacky is that it's no wackier to stay in a corporate job where you're just a cog in the machine. You actually have less control over your destiny. You have the illusion of security. But out here, we get to make our own security in some cases. And I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of my life learning these basic business skills. And I saw that my friends and colleagues who had left out hadn't been trained in business. They hadn't been trained in business diagnostics and the theory behind scaling. And they were getting fleeced by programs and other coaches that were kind of giving them surface level strategies, but weren't teaching them business fluency. And it's one of my missions that you don't need to go spend, $200,000 at Harvard Business School to learn how to operate and run your own business sustainably and profitably.
Interesting. Now, most people, and maybe not, but some people in your situation, they would leave the big corporate mothership. They would go out on their own as a consultant, and they would try and get those same big corporate clients on their own, and maybe do different things, more niched, more specialized, more focused. What made you switch from, hey, I'm used to working with big companies and having these big company assignments, to let me delve into the world of entrepreneurship and a much smaller type of business?
And you don't need me. They're covered. Big guys are covered. It's lucrative. There's lots of big clients out there, but that's not where I think the heart of a beating economy lives. Like, big guys will always be there. But when we think about local businesses, small businesses, creating opportunities for people that don't fit in the corporate machine, that's really interesting, because I think that's where, we develop these communities of care, is not through big corporations, but through small businesses where you actually get to know the CEO, you get to know the owners, you develop really strong relationships that are more than just about profit and about the bottom line, that are about supporting you. So, no big corporate company is going to give you really a break on terms unless it benefits them. But small relationships, small business relationships, it's a give and a take, and it's more of a collaborative environment. And, big guys, they got their own internal corporate consulting. I want to work with people that didn't have access to that kind of training.
Wow, very cool. So would it be fair to say that you're bringing sort of big company thinking or big company systems and process to an underserved market where these folks don't really know even the very beginnings of what they need to scale smarter and to grow a real enterprise?
I think it's bringing both. It's bringing the core values and the mission and the why of our businesses and these sustainable business practices that maybe come from corporate America or, more scientific management. It's bringing those together, because what I also find is that some small businesses leap too far into the let me do it the way that I was taught by the business books. And they haven't gone deep on their mission, their core values as a business owner or as a business, and decided on the real purpose of their growth. So they've lost the soul of the business by focusing too much on the structure and like, I'm going to do it this particular way. So I think I bring the soul back to more structured businesses, and I bring the structure and the business practices to more soul-based businesses.
Fantastic. And I'm just channeling our listeners, and there may be folks that are just starting out. So they're just starting out, or maybe like you, they're that corporate refugee that's like, man, I'd love to have my own business. I'd love to go out there as a speaker or an author or a consultant or some kind of professional service provider. They might be listening and they go, oh, well, this sounds great, but I haven't even made $100,000 yet. I haven't even made $200,000 yet. I'm too small for what Jessica is talking about. Straighten out our thinking about that.
You're never too small to connect with why you started this business in the first place, because that's going to dictate your pricing. It's going to dictate who your clients are, what type of engagements you like to do. You know, in your first 100,000, you're going to try a lot of things just to get money coming in the door, to see what you like and don't like. That's why I don't really love like niche down. And I'm like, well, do you know what your niche is that you really want that early on? Probably not. But if we don't every few months kind of reconnect to why am I in this business in the first place? I really liked one of the recent podcasts you did where you can be a soloist and make a lot of money as a soloist, or you can build a business and build a firm where you're leading and doing, you know, basically being a partner of a consulting business. Those are two wildly different business models for two, I think, very different missions in life about how you want to spend your life and your time. So, you know, it's that every few months, reconnecting with your purpose, reconnecting with the why, so that you can maintain integrity with the type of business owner you want to be and the type of business you want to build.
Very, very important. And I love on your website, because I've also done some digital stalking. on your website, you have this amazingly powerful term called a U-shaped business. A business that is really shaped around you and your personality and your preferences and your strengths and the impact that you want to make in the world. When folks are in that lower tier, you know, they're at the 100, 200K level. Do you sometimes hear, well, Jessica, you know, I'm just trying to make a buck. I'm trying to pitch whatever is going to sell. And I'm less concerned about a business that fits me. I want something where I can make some money. And then you can sort of see them going off on this wrong path, right? Because they're getting pulled into things without the intention, without the drive, without that self-examination. Let's rewind. Let's say someone comes knocking on your door. They go to the website, they download some goodies, and we'll talk about some gifts and some resources later. And they're like, I'm not even sure where I am. Talk about the different stages and phases of the clients that you work with. And then we can dig in a little bit into the needs of each one at every one of those levels.
Yeah, I use a tree metaphor, which may resonate with some of your clients, may not, because I think building a business is like growing a tree. You can't just go from 0 to 60 overnight. There's stages. There's the first stage, which is the seed stage, which is I'm not sure what I want to do yet. I think I know. I'm going to go try some stuff. This is, depending on the size of your clients, could be the first $100,000, could be the first $10,000, just depending on the size of the engagements that they're working with. This is when we're experimenting. We're planting seeds. We don't really know what we like. We don't know what's going to work. We have a hypothesis. We're testing it. Then we have the sprout stage, which is we've got some product market fit. We're going to go deeper on some of those stages, deeper on some of those clients, building those relationships out. You're still figuring out what works. We get to the strengthen stage. Imagine like a sapling where, all right, you've figured out some things that work. Now it's time to give yourself some structure, give yourself some scaffolding, prune back what doesn't work. You know, you've tried a bunch of stuff. Now you're like, okay, these are the clients I like to work with. These are the engagements I like to do. You start documenting your intellectual property so you can start having repeatable frameworks that then you can either sustain or scale. So, you know, at that point, sustaining it might be, I'm a really profitable soloist. I'm going to continue to raise my rates, continue to deepen those relationships with the clients I've got, but I'm going to keep my practice small. I'm going to outsource to my delightfully tiny team of bookkeepers and maybe a marketing team, but I'm not going to bring in anyone to do the work with me. or I'm going to scale a business and I'm going to become the partner, I'm going to become the leader and have a team that delivers the work. Those are two different options you can make at that business. And then there's the stage that no one really talks about, the sunset stage, which is this phase of the business is ending. How do I navigate to the next phase or the next thing I'm passionate about with cash and time?
And sunset, when we're specifically, sunset talks about the business, not necessarily the business owner.
Correct. I've had a run with one service portfolio for a while, and I'm not really loving this anymore. So how do I transition to maybe my next industry or my next kind of body of work in a way that is seamless for the business?
Excellent. I just wanted to clarify because obviously when we say the word sunset, it's like, oh, you're 70 years old, you're ready to wrap it up and, go into semi-retirement or full retirement. You could be 27 years old and the business that you've built is in the sunset stage. And now you need to rethink, reimagine, reboot your entrepreneurial adventure.
Exactly. Thank you for the clarification.
Hang on. Let's back up the truck. Beep, 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 beep. Listen, I have a brand new sales book out there. You got to get your hands on it. It is awesome. It is amazing. It is fantastic. It is useful, practical, actionable, and a ton of bonuses are waiting for you over at doitselling.com. Grab your copy right now and grab all the bonuses, goodies, companion tools, and downloads that go with the book. You'll love it. I guarantee it.
So talk to me about some of the mistakes, either mistakes or myths or some of the common wrong thinking when we drop the word scaling into a conversation in front of a room full of entrepreneurs. What are they thinking? What are they doing that is really not in line with how to do it the smart way?
Well, we have to first declare that scaling is different than growth. Growing means just growing more sales, but probably not growing your profit. Sometimes you grow more sales and you actually make less money. That's not actually scale. Scale is when you can deliver your products and services more efficiently, mostly through having either automation or others deliver the work for you. I think the two biggest challenges I see with scale is one, when business gets busy, people want to bring on team members, which is great, except the busyness is a fluke and not part of a sustained marketing and sales engine, as it were. So you bring on team members and now you're spending all of your time trying to keep them booked and busy because that was a one-time thing. It was a blip. So you end up working harder to actually make less money or maybe the same money because all of your extra income is going to paying people. So it's thinking about scaling too early before there's a sustained kind of being oversubscribed. And then the other part is not having the systems and structures to allow you to be the leader and you're stuck being the doer. So you can't scale if you're always doing delivery. And if you haven't set up those processes, the communication, the frameworks to step out of that doing mode and into the leading mode. And I think that's where I think there's a challenge with, again, thinking about what's the business you want to build. Because if you want to do the doing, then is scaling right for you? If you want to do the leading, scaling's perfect for you. And I think there's that doing leading shift that is not always made when you bring on other team members.
Oh boy, so much good stuff to unpack there. So there are certainly these accidental entrepreneurs, right? Where they think they're scaling, but what they've done is they've grown, they turn around and they've got like 8 people. And, they ask themselves, where did these people come from? Why are they here? Like, I am now in the managing and leading business. I am not in the business of the business that I started. And that either doesn't fit them or they have some growth to do themselves personally to become that leader that the business needs. Now, I know that you're also, part of your work is fractional COO.
Yep.
So let's say that you're on a fractional COO assignment and you come into a business like this and you start looking around. You look at the finances, you look at the operations, you look at the profitability, you look at the systems, you look at the team, you look at the roles and responsibilities, you look at the hiring. And again, obviously, without using names, what are some of the disasters and gaps and train wrecks in each of those areas that you're like, oh boy, I can't believe this entrepreneur didn't think about this. We need to fix this. We need to upgrade that. We need to install this. Give us kind of a function by function rundown of kind of what you see when things are kind of ugly.
Yeah, we usually start with the management. The leader is still always brought in on fires, and everything is a fire. That's the number one. That is the key when you're like, okay, this was a growth by accident scenario because they grew before they had processes and structures in place. So when everything's a fire drill, you know that there's no foundation. When profitability, this is a little bit tricky because sometimes you have like service-based businesses where being a loss leader is important to generate market share. So I'm going to set that aside. But you have these service-based businesses, these consulting firms that actually don't make money. You overpay or you're not charging enough to your clients to account for the cost of running the business and the cost of your contractors. So you get that caught in that cash game where you have to book more business to get the funds to pay your people for the work they've already done because you're in a cash flow cycle game. So those are the two like high level symptoms of we got some problems in this organization. But then you go to the next level, you look at delivery. Nothing's on time. You think it's going to take 50 hours and it takes 100, which is probably one of the reasons your costs are super high. That's why you're not profitable. Then you look at under the hood and you're like, okay, well, who's doing sales? Who's doing business development? Who's doing marketing? And everything relies on the leader as the bottleneck. So again, going back to everything's a fire drill. And then it ultimately comes down to what's the core values? Are we hiring the right people? Are we leading our teams in the right way? It gets to that mission setup. And when they've grown too fast, I just need people to deliver the work. I don't care really what it costs. I don't really know what it costs. I just need to serve my clients. That's how you know, everything's a fire drill. Nothing's on time. You're actually not making very much money. These are like the core symptoms that point to the root causes that we dig under the hood. We in fractional COO work.
For sure. Another friend of mine, Jason Hull, who actually works with property management companies, that's his niche. He once drew this picture. And picture number one is the leader pulling a wagon up a mountaintop. And in the wagon is all of the team, right? So they're doing the heavy lifting and the team is sort of along for the ride. He says that business is not a business you want to run. Second picture, there is still a wagon. There is still a mountaintop. Now the team is outside the wagon. The team is pulling the wagon. The leader is in the wagon with the binoculars going, okay, I'm going to set the vision. I'm going to set the destination, but you guys need to pull the wagon up the mountaintop. So those are all fantastic indicators, what you just mentioned, that the leader is pulling the team. Everything takes their personal time, attention, and presence. I love what you said about they're involved in every fire and everything is a fire. So talk about what are some of the growth strategies or the mindset strategies that get the leader to let go or start letting go? Trust more, delegate more, hire smarter. And it could also be that the team, to quote Marshall Goldsmith, the team that got you here is not the same team that's going to get you there. Let's unpack that for a minute.
Oh, yeah. The team that got you there, everyone in the business needs to have mastery and autonomy and be connected to the purpose. Someone gave me that framework, the MAP framework. I can't remember who it was. I apologize for not citation. But what you find is that when you're starting, maybe you hire a team member, you just want someone to do the job. So you don't hire for autonomy, you hire for mastery. At some point, you'll need to think about hiring for someone who can do not just the job that's today, but the next job, and someone who has the autonomy to see problems, get curious, and take initiative to solve them versus waiting for the leader to solve it. And then you need someone that's, again, they need to be connected to the purpose of the organization, not just a freelancer for hire. Those are the team that you need to carry you to the next level. But what I find with leaders is that there's two components. You have to, before you're willing to step away from the day-to-day, we have to both have an opportunity for you to brain dump everything in your head and get the team aligned on the most critical priorities. But also we have to give the leader something to do that is more visionary because they were responsible for carrying the load, carrying that wagon up the hill, as you call it, for such a long time. And so when you say, no, now you get in the wagon and the team is going to drive the wagon up the hill, the identity is shot. It's like, well, I was doing, and the value is on the doing. And who am I if I'm not doing? What do I do with my time if I'm not doing? So we have to simultaneously help the leader vision about what's next. What are the truly visionary CEO responsibilities? How do you lead? How do you delegate? How do you set priorities? And then how do you have CEO time where you're not hands on keyboard? Like that's the hugest part of it is how do you help people know what to do with their time when it's not slammed full of meetings and not go back into the fire? So that's the one thing. And the other part, which I think we'll talk about, is how do you set up structures and policies and process and really strategy so that you know that your team is working on the things that you want them to be working on as a collective versus kind of working on the day-to-day fires. But you have to be the one that leads first.
For sure. Well, let's go there now. Let's talk about systems and process and standards and kind of guardrails, because I think the foundational problem is that most entrepreneurs that start a business are right brain, creative, big picture. They're not the detail people. They're not the process people. They're not the operations people. And of course, what we desperately want and need is that left brain, right? We need the left brain thinking, process, systems, numbers, repeatability, consistency. So let's talk about, it is always that integrator role or that COO that we need to bring on first? Or how do you get a right brain entrepreneur, business owner to think more systematically or process-wise so that they can get into the wagon?
Sometimes it's about having that right-hand integrator COO role. You want to make sure that your COO, while they is almost as visionary as the visionary, because you don't just want that person to be another person to delegate to. You need them to be a visionary in the operation system strategy portion. But I think it first starts with getting the entrepreneur to sit down, which is even more difficult than it sounds sometimes, and really put on paper what keeps them up at night, where do they want to go? Again, where do they want to go? Really critical. And having a trusted partner to say, okay, these are the 3 to 4 things that we need to work on right now. These are the root causes the first root causes, keeping you from going from A to B. We're going to work on these. And if we discover that these aren't even the deepest roots, we're going to put that aside and go work on the next root. And then it's the patience, I say it, to not work on new stuff until you've addressed the 3 to 4 projects that you set out to. And I think that's where, do you need an integrator COO if you've got really trusted kind of functional lieutenants? Maybe, maybe not. You do need someone that's going to hold back the entrepreneur, the visionary, to say, these are all the great ideas and we're going to put them on the backlog board. We're going to put them over here. We're not going to lose them. We're going to capture the idea. But working on these doesn't fix the underlying root causes of the business. We got to work on these 4. And if we're not making progress on these 4, then we have to ask different questions. But I think having someone that can absorb the ideas and protect the organization somewhat from ideas flying all over the place from the right brain, those ideas, the days will come. But if we're changing tack on the team too often, we don't allow them to step into their genius and do their jobs because they're 100% of the time dedicated to absorbing the ideas from the leader. So sometimes you need an integrator COO to keep the projects on the track. And sometimes you just need someone that's the idea sink for the entrepreneur so that the rest of the organization can do their jobs.
Yeah, boy, that whole newness thing, right? Getting an entrepreneur to say, hey, let's slow down on the new stuff, the new ideas, because obviously we have 100 ideas a day. And none of those are going to help fix some of the functional, operational problems in the business that you have right now. You mentioned a moment ago about pricing. So talk a little bit about pricing, do's and don'ts, and kind of how, because what you said is so on point that sometimes we increase revenue and unknowingly we've decreased our profit. And again, Mr. and Ms. Right Brain, creative, wonderful. It's like, have you looked at the numbers? Do you realize that our biggest client is costing us money every month instead of making us money every month? How do we adjust that pricing? And how, when you come in, what are some of the pricing and fee considerations that you look at first?
I think you always have to start with the numbers, which I know most entrepreneurs are like, don't make me look at my numbers. Don't make me look at my reports. A trusted bookkeeper who's actually going to break your projects into project-based accounting is worth their weight in gold. So if you find a bookkeeper who will help you match expenses to projects, keep them. But we have to look at every project. We look at how many hours and what rates are you paying your team, which is why hourly tracking is really important, or at least having an estimation of, I have these many contractors, they work on these projects. Doing mini accounting for your projects helps us know individually which projects are profitable, which clients are profitable. And then when we know at least our starting point, we can start to think about, okay, how am I pricing based on my capacity? How many hours is it taking to deliver the work? What's the market going to bear for this? And what's the value that I'm getting, or what's the value my clients are getting from this? And I think too many consultants or service-based providers just price hourly without thinking of, oh, if I write a website for this client and that generates them another $1 million in revenue, well, I shouldn't be charging $10,000 for that because there's significantly more value that I'm creating. So it really depends on looking at the case studies and the results you've gotten from your clients before. What is the return on investment your clients can expect? And looking at capacity, market rates, value-based pricing to say, okay, of all of these three different kind of considerations, now what's the price that my client should be paying, and justifying it based on the value you're creating for your clients.
Yes, I know. Terrific episode here, but have you seen our latest web training? Oh my goodness, pop over there right now, or as soon as you're done listening to this episode, it's doitmarketing.com/webinar. See you over there. Back to the good stuff.
Well, I also, just going back to my digital stalking, you've done something very interesting and I think very admirable on your website. And this is sometimes one of my questions. I say, well, who've been some of the big influences on your thinking, or who are some of your coaches and mentors that you've learned from? And right on your website, you say, hey, here's some awesome, amazing people. And again, not endorsing their whole body of work, but selected items from these amazing folks. And then also some books that you keep going back to. So my question is, out of those, which 2 or 3 do you want to give a shout out to? And then perhaps even more interesting, what inspired you to put that list on your website? Because I think it's a brilliant idea.
Well, when I leapt out of corporate, I leapt pretty hard into the world of the feminist ecosystem, because if the corporate world is all about profit over people, in some cases, how could I go to a world that put the equality of humans first? So one of my teachers, Kelly Deals, is a big influence on me, both in like my practice of citation, but also how I think about pricing and business model structure. I love Greg McKeown, who's the essentialist. And then I want to thank 2 of my other teachers, Maggie Patterson and Michelle Mazur. They have a podcast called Duped, which is all about the questionable practices in the online business world. That really got me thinking about, okay, how are we being taken advantage of sometimes by persuasive marketing tactics? And how can we, that's part of what informs my mission, is how can we increase business fluency and business literacy and the ability for others to understand not just like tactics and tools, but the fundamental business strategies, so that they're not taken advantage of from persuasive marketing that's really, you're going to sell them a bill of goods and not deliver on that. That's maybe not as frequent with your audience, but a lot of the people I work with who have been burned before by a high-priced coach or consultant who promised them the world and didn't deliver very much.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I put my lineage, my coaching and teaching lineage on my website, because these are not new ideas necessarily. I might be somewhat new in how I combine some of my thinking, my business experience and my industrial engineering training and my, feminist ecology type of reading and learning. That might be new, but business fundamentals aren't really new. And so by proclaiming that, like, I have the secret, that's disingenuous to me and my audience, and may actually have people buy from me that shouldn't, because they think I have some secret solution, versus, no, I'm a guide that's going to help be your sounding board, but I'm not the one that has all the answers.
Love that so much. That's really, really great. You mentioned ecosystem. I want to use the word ecosystem in a slightly different way. Do you find that most of the business owners that you work with, they try and do everything themselves, and they do not tap into the ecosystem around their prospects? So, for example, joint ventures, alliances, referral partners, they have a very independent spirit, and they say, we're going to go it alone. Jessica, I'm smart, I'm capable, I've got a long list of credentials, I've written 3 books, I am so smart, I am going to go it alone. And that go it alone mentality keeps their business smaller than it otherwise would be. Talk about ecosystem, alliances, joint ventures, referral partners. How does that land in your world?
Oh, very much so. I think we're consumed by the myth of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and the self-made man. And, that doesn't work in this type of environment anymore. Did it ever really? But relying on affiliates and, referral partners and joint ventures might, in the short run, I use the short run in quotes, might mean you have less revenue because you're giving some away to a partner. But in the long run, you're not going out alone. You're going to get more business. They're present in networks that you're not. So you expand your weak ties. You kind of capitalize on Dunbar's number to say, well, I can reach a much larger audience. You serve as higher value to your clients because you don't say that I can do it all, right? You have you're more valuable to your clients by saying, I don't do it all, but here's who are my trusted partners in my, adjacent functions or adjacent problems. I think you have more trust with your clients when you say, I'm actually not the best person to solve your problem. I'm going to refer you out. But because you have people speaking your name in rooms you're not in, when you have alliances and affiliates and joint ventures, it becomes a longer term game that allows you to keep playing versus I have to do it all myself. And it allows you to navigate those cycles of being on and potentially needing to take some time away because you have people still lobbying for you, even when you're not actively doing business development.
Super, super important. And I love the way that you framed that up. Talk a little bit, Jessica, about the investable opportunities in your world and what are the different ways and levels that you serve your clients. What are your investable opportunities?
Yeah, so I have my strategy sessions, which I call the deep dive. This is when you say, I'm at the precipice of something and I can't break through, or the metrics just aren't looking good at the surface, but you don't know where to go next. And so we have a couple week deep dive where you go into your metrics, your methods, your models, all the way down to your mission to say, okay, what's the root cause keeping you from growth? And then how do we design the next step? I serve as what I call a guide because a lot of consultants come in and tell you what to do, but they're not in it with you. They're like, here's your assignment, go do. I like to guide my clients by working with them one-on-one, both in consulting and hands-on support. And then for larger clients who are like, I truly need someone in the business helping me get these systems integrated or these processes, particularly relates to strategy, KPIs, and OKRs. How do we actually work in the business with them from an implementation perspective over a quarter or 6 months?
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I've got 2 final questions for you as we're about to land the plane here. The final question is, what resources and links can we share with folks? The question before that is, if our listeners were to take one central idea from our conversation today about scaling with intention, building a U-shaped business, all of the wonderful gems that you've shared with us, what would you hope that one overall takeaway concept would be?
The one overall takeaway concept is the U-shaped business. Not every business model and not every business size is meant for you based on your stage of life, your capacity, your desire for what you want to do with the gifts and skills you have. So don't adopt your mentor's model. Don't adopt, your model or my model. Look at the possibilities available to you and decide, versus accidentally falling into a business that you're not sure you really like very much. So decide in advance versus scaling just because someone told you to. And the resources I would leave people with, they can go to my website, jessicalackey.com/welcome. I have there my newsletter where I go deep on topics every week, but also my Rooted Business Lifecycle quiz that will help you know which stage of business you're in and give you some tools and tips to maximize what you need to do at that given stage.
Brilliant. Well, Jessica Lackey, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are a rock star. I appreciate you.
Thank you. It was great being on here.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.